Greetings YouTube and welcome to the Dragon Network. In today's video I'm going to be giving you guys a profile of the deck I took to regionals this past weekend here in Regina, finishing 3rd place, earning myself the playmat here, the deck box, and my Nats invite, and I did it with Blue Eyes Dragon Rulers, which is something that basically popped up over the course of the last week, and I found to be really intriguing, and I've just been playing over the course of the last week. The build I have here was just something I settled upon heading into the regionals. I tweaked it up a bit from standard lists so that I thought I would give myself some advantages against both meta and rogue, but it's definitely not optimal. I'll tell you guys that right now. There are some things about this I would definitely change, especially after they're playing through not only regionals but locals the following day. Now, before I get into the profile, I want to take a moment to talk about the regionals as a whole. Our tournament was about 70 plus people, I think. The head judge was telling me that we were potentially going to get close to capacity, which is 100. And I'm like, oh, well, I guess I better sign up quickly then. But we had a pretty good turnout, and I know the turnout was very small compared to like other places, Calgary, Toronto, Montreal, especially SoCal. Like, our regionals was basically the size of a small locals in SoCal, but we also had a lot of good players present. Like, everyone who topped was good at the game, like really good, and it makes me happy to be in that crowd. I'm not going to lie. Like, this was a hard regionals to top, and I think I did better at this one than in previous regionals. And other things about the regionals, this one ran really well. Like, the judge team was excellent. Shout out in particular to Damon. I know you've got a channel. You're doing a vlog for this. When you get that done, make it as a video response to this, because I want to see that. Judge team was excellent. The TO, she did a good job. Good work, Shannon. And what was... oh yeah, one other thing about this that I liked was, actually, before we started the tournament, we all took a moment of silence in memory of Brendan, who, as you guys know, unfortunately passed away last March, and was a beloved member of the Saskatchewan Yu-Gi-Oh community. So that was really touching, and yeah, I just really like that. And that being said, now let's get on to the actual deck profile of Blue Eyes Dragon Rulers. So the gimmick of this deck is that you're running the SOL engine previously seen in decks like SOL Hopeless Dragon and the Egg Disaster Dragon, and the idea is you use the White Stone with Cards of Consonance, Phoenix Wing Blast, like your discard target, as a discard target, to not only draw cards or do things, but to also get Blue Eyes to your hand, who you then can use for discarding or as fodder. Like, these guys set up your graveyard for banishing for your big dragons, which is fairly important, and they set up for really neat DDR and return plays. Now, I was running 3 and 3 of each, but I'm thinking of taking this down to 2 and 2. I'm going to have to see how that works. I like the idea of running a single copy of Debris Dragon and a Trigon or another DDR, which I was only running 1 of. And then for the rest of the monsters, you have the Dragon Rulers. So 3 Blaster, 3 Redox, 3 Tempest, 3 Tidal, 1 Corseska, and 1 Flammable Guard. I also opted to run a pair of Effect Veilers just to give myself some form of protection, as I really wasn't running any defenses, just 2 main deck Vanities, Emptiness, and 2 Phoenix Wing Moonblast. I'm not too sure how I feel about this going forward, but it did help me here and there for game 1s, which is what I wanted, and I would side these out for skill drains games 2 and 3, or I would keep them in if I was going second, and I was going up against something that I knew I needed, like just that turn 1 defense, i.e. Dragoonides. That's it for the monsters. For the spells, I ran 3 copies of Dragon Ravine. If you are playing a dragon deck that's not Chaos or Hieratic Dragon, you have to max out on this card. Like, this is so important. You need to see this as soon as possible. You need to make use of this as soon as possible. Like, the format's gotten to the point where it's all about field spells, and he who can get the most out of their field spells. Like, if you can keep your Ravine out the longest, you're going to win. Like, it's very Pokemon-esque, where last format in Pokemon, and even actually still now, it was all about Burbank City Gym, and then getting rid of it with your Tropical Beach, so that when they play their second Burbank City Gym, you play your last Tropical Beach, and now they can't get rid of it at all because they played all their stadiums. And that's the case here. You play your Dragon Ravine on top of their Ravine to make it so that they can not only toolbox, but also it gets rid of their Vanity's Emptiness. It also gets rid of Spellbook Tower, and people who side in Zombie World, like Magnus, who got 5th place with his strange zombie hero beat stun deck that is really hard to describe. So, you should be maxing out on this in Dragon Rulers, Dragoonity, Disaster Dragon, no, Hopeless, no, I'm not too sure about Hopeless, even, and Blue Eyes Turbo too. Like, I think you should be, yeah, just, you have to max out on this. Then for, like, the draw support, which is what makes this deck tick, you got your 3 swords, 3 cards of consonants, and 2 trade-in. I'm happy with this number. I was playing 3 trade-in before, but I did not like it. It was just too clumpy. I was also playing upstarts, but I found that to be completely unnecessary. Just these cards will be enough. Trade-in for your blue eyes, cards of consonants for your white stones, and your other guys. Although I don't like using them for cards of consonants unless I have to. I do like my levels in synchro plays. And then this card is just busted, and it's probably going to go to 2 or 1 next format. Then for some one-offs, I ran a single copy of DDR, which was upside down for some reason. DDR is especially strong in this deck because you'll always have things in your hand. You'll have Dragon Rulers to pitch, you'll have White Stones to pitch, you'll have Blue Eyes to pitch, and you can special summon back a color that you need in order to make a rank 7. You can special summon back a Blue Eyes who can use, who you can use to beat over things like a Blaster, a Crimson Blader that you baited the previous turn or whatnot, or the World of Prophecy, whose 2900 attack is really, really weird, but it's also difficult to get over without using some kind of effect-based stuff. But, yeah, DDRing back a Blue Eyes is fun. I actually just won a match by DDRing back my Blue Eyes and swinging for 3000 in game. White Lightning attack! Yep. And then last I ran a single copy of MST because I figured people would be main decking Vanity's Emptiness in doubles or even triples. I knew there were going to be Evilswarm and Evilswarm and Constellar present, and MST's kind of clutch for getting rid of their emptiness or just getting rid of their safe zones as they try and change this stuff. I never actually played them, but I was prepared for them. My round 1 opponent playing the last warrior from another Planet.dek, surprisingly enough, was main decking a single copy, or was it 2 of, I don't know. He was main decking Mind Drain, and that kind of threw me off. But I drew my MST, and it allowed me to go off and do things. So I do like the 1-upping here, but I might drop it. And that's it for my spells. I ran very few traps, like just 5. I ran 2 Phoenix Wing Blast, this over by Geki Break as Stardust, and things that are immune to destruction effects were present. And I just felt this to be the much stronger card choice. I want to actually up this to 3. Then 2 copies of Vanity's Emptiness. I'm not too sure how I would feel about 2 in the main, especially in this build because you're drawing a lot. I did draw 2 multiples of these a lot, and every time I drew multiple Vanity's Emptiness and I wasn't playing the mirror, I'm like, I really wish this was something else. And like my meta was very, very diverse. I mean, there were a lot of of the meta decks here, but there were also quite a few rogue decks that Vanity's Emptiness was not strong against. So maybe it's just a result of my experience. And then lastly, 1 copy of Return from Different Dimension. I never actually got this off. I drew it once, and that was when I'd already had the Madolche matchup completely in my favor, so it was just unnecessary. I did get it flipped on me, though, and as expected, I lost the game. So, yeah, this card's so stupid. I ended up flipping up like 4 times at locals the day afterwards, though, and yeah. Slobbering time is what I call it. And, yeah, it needs to be banned. So that's it for the main deck, 40 cards. I don't believe you should be going past that in this particular build. You don't want to be adding more to the inconsistent nature of an SOL-based deck. So now I'll get on to my extra deck where I ran 2 copies of Dracosac and 1 copy of Big Eye and 1 copy of Thunder Charger and my number 74 Master of Blades as my rank 7s. I never went into these guys that often, but I felt like they would be helpful for this guy for getting over tokens. 2600 of damage is fairly important, and this for when I know my opponent's playing decks that run targeting based stuff like D-Prison, Evac device, and such forth, but I can't make a Thought Ruler, then Master Blaze is the next best choice. But I should probably cut this out, and I'm not too sure if I need 2 Dracosacs in here. I only made the 1, but it was pretty clutch, and then I used Big Eye only once, but it was to win my match against Prophecy as I took his world, and I was able to win. So those are some things I might change. And for my last Exceed, I ran a single copy of Heliopolis. It's very situational when you make this, but he does allow you to do some interesting things, i.e., pop a whole bunch of cards, and then summon back your Dragon Rulers for a large push. You're largely going to make this either by DDRing back a Blue Eyes and then putting it on top of another Synchro monster like a Scrap Dragon, a Colossal Fighter, or you banish the Stardust and a Scrap Dragon for return, and you decide to do that. I don't know. I mean, Galaxy's Tachyon Dragon was something I was testing as well, but I did not like it, so I took it out. This is probably going to get dropped, though, and I'll put in a Felgren Knight, the Divine Dragon, whenever he comes out. So that's it for the Xyz monsters. For the Synchros, I ran a single copy of Star Eater, which I probably should not have. I was not main decking Debris Dragon, and making Star Eater in this deck is difficult without it, as you're basically going to be giving up a Dracosack token, a Dragon Ruler, and your tuner, and I'd rather have Dracosack and the Dragon Ruler rather than this. So yeah, if I don't put Debris Dragon here, this is going to get cut. I ran one copy of Ozuri's Silver Dragon. One's enough. I didn't summon it in the tournament, but he did pop up a lot during testing beforehand. The protection effect and his defense is it's really good. It's why I actually do want to find a way to make this more playable in the deck, because Ozuri's can only be really defeated by a Star Eater or something with likewise attack. One copy of Crimson Blader. There should be a second one in here. I only ran the one and I really regretted it. One Colossal Fighter, one of the best cards you can make when you don't have adequate protection for your Stardust. Scrap Dragon, Stardust, Thought Ruler, and then the remaining Synchros were a Black Rose and an Army Arm. I really wanted to fit an Ancient Fairy Dragon and a Red Dragon Archfiend in here. The 3000 attack, I really needed that a couple points, and Red Dragon would have been able to fit the bill. But live and learn. Like, there are changes I'm making to this deck, especially given that I drew so wonky at times. Like, I opened multiple Blue Eyes and couldn't make use of them for trading such war. So it's gonna. That's the thing with this deck, is it's kind of a double-edged sword. But it will get better as this format goes on. It's only just been a week since it became a thing here, and there's already so many interesting ways to build it. So now I'm going to finish this off with my side deck. I ran 2 copies of Maxi for the Mirror in Special Summon Heavy decks and such forth. 2 copies of Fencing Fire Ferret. Ferret is amazing. It's a 1700 beater, which is nice, so it can get some damage in. You can kill your opponent in about 7 turns or so. It's a fire, so you can banish it or pitch it for Blaster, and it pops monsters when it dies, like Ophion, which is great. It's really helpful against Fire Fists, actually. One copy of Dark Hole for spammy decks in the Mirror, and to bait out things like a Pandemic, so that I can then summon my Ferret and ram it at Ophion, kill it, and they can't dress it because they Pandemic'd it. But I never faced Ophion.dek, so yeah, I never had to side this in either. But Ophion.dek was present. The remaining MSTs, I brought these in every game 2 and 3 because I knew Mind Drain, Soul Drain, and Imperial Iron Wall were coming in, and they of course killed this deck. And also the Mirror to get rid of those emptiness. 2 copies of Debunk for the Mirror, I never drew them. 2 copies of Skill Drain for Rogue decks, I drew these, and not surprisingly, it did what it did. 1 copy of Waboku for the Mirror, and for Hieratics, which were also present. I opted to run Waboku over Scarecrow because you can Waboku a Star Eater, Scarecrow you can't. So this is like a really good thing, and not to mention, oh, and why this over Threatening War? Because there are those chance situations where they have a Blaster or Red Med on the field, and you've got a Blader. You can summon Blader, ram into Red Med, flip up Waboku. Blader doesn't die, but the Red Med does, so Blader gets his effect. That was the reason why I ran this, but I'm probably going to drop it for the for the MST that got my main, so they can fit in some other stuff. And then 1 copy of Eradicator because I've had an open slot. As far as what I played, round 1 I played against the Last Warrior from Another Planet. I 2-0'd him. Round 2 I played against Dual Axis Fire Fist, piloted by Doom Caliber Kaiser. 2-0'd him. We had a good game 1, and then game 2 it was like sided cards everywhere. Round 3 was against Madolche, 2-1. I beat him. It was crazy game 1 because I got off and with my draw engine, like I resolved Cards of Consonance, Trade In, and Stemvisar's Sword in a single turn, and it just put me so far ahead. Game 2, I got a match loss for drawing too many cards by accident. Game 3, I skill drained. Next round was against 4-Axis Fire Fist. Game 1, it was grindy. Game 2, or sided cards, I resolved MSTs on his Soul Drain and Mind Drain, and then I made Stardust and Thought Ruler. Next round was against Samurai. Game 1, I bladed him, And game 2, I skill drained him. Next round was against the Mirror. I drew Axe game 1, and he went off on that game. Game 2, I had a Colossal Fighter with a Wing Blast, which I had to use to protect myself from a Big Eye, but then he flipped up return. I was like, oh, I don't have the resources to deal with one of that. So yeah, that one happened. And the last round was against Prophecy. I did grindy things, managed to keep him from resolving his towers. Like, I opened with, I think, all of my Ravines, which was really helpful for keeping his tower off the field, and therefore he couldn't like keep grinding things out against me. So that was the thing. Game 2, I only saw one of my sided cards, which was one of my extra MSTs, but it was enough to like do some things. Like, all I remember is he dropped the World, and I basically sat behind Colossal Fighter, which he could not get rid of. He couldn't get to a Fate because I think I Veilered his Blue Boy, and I Veilered his Priestess. So he couldn't kill this thing. So all I was forced to do was just keep beating over it with the World. And ultimately I was able to set up a Big Eye, take his World, and I attacked with Colossal Fighter and World to put him down to 900 life, and he couldn't do anything afterwards. He drew all spells and needed a Spellcaster, but he couldn't get that. And so I ended up finishing the day with only one actual match loss, which is pretty nice. I lost one game to myself, one game to my deck, and one game to return. And yeah, I was overall pleased with how this deck ran. There are some things I do want to change though. I want to drop these, and I want to fit in another copy of DDR, and I want to fit in another copy of Wing Blast. Those are the immediate changes I want to do. I'm also thinking of fitting in Terraforming, as getting to Ravine is just that important, but we will see about that. And as far as what's going to be happening next here on the Dragon Network, well, now that the regionals is out of the way, I can finally start playing around with some interesting deck ideas that I've seen over the course of the last week. And what will they be? Well, we will find out soon enough, but yeah, thank you guys for watching, and until next time, this is Obligatory TGS, jacking out.